Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I have a video here from Mark Felton, and it is, of course, Mark Felton Productions, and it's Reich Chancellery Eagle Mystery. So basically, it says in the description, on display at the Imperial War Museum in London is a striking but bullet-riddled bronze eagle that once adorned the Reich Chancellery in Berlin. How it came into the possession of the British is a bit of a mystery, but one I set out to solve. So this should be a pretty good one. Mark Felton does fantastic history videos. I love history videos. So we have a World War II mystery here to check out. And I will link this video in the description along with links to Patreon, how you can support the channel here on YouTube, as well as my new sports channel where all rugby and cricket videos of the future will be. But let's go ahead and jump into this.
At the Imperial War Museum in London is displayed one of the most striking trophies brought home by Allied troops in World War II, this enormous bronze eagle. It came from the new Reich Chancellery, that vast government complex built by Albert Speer in the latter 1930s.
Swastikas, painful to see, but I've got some old coins that still have it
and then
on
by
there.
the huge ground campaign
I don't even like
sitting
them.
in April to May 1945. As I'm sure you know, Berlin was captured by the Red Army, so I've often wondered how this enormous and valuable trophy ended up in London. I've spent several months trying to find out, but it has been a very frustrating journey. Berlin fell to Soviet forces on the 2nd of May 1945. British and American forces did not reach Berlin until early July, except for some advance parties, in order to take control of their respective occupation sectors in the shattered capital. The Reich Chancellery site remained in Soviet hands, as it and Hitler's bunker beneath it were in the post-war Soviet sector, later East Berlin. Between the arrival of the Red Army and the arrival of British and American troops in Berlin, Soviet troops had extensively looted the government buildings of the former Third Reich, both unofficially but also officially, as trophy units gathered material to be shipped back to Moscow to be displayed to mark the victory over fascism. However, for some reason, this huge eagle remained in place at the Reich Chancellery during the vacuum of May to July 1945. The Reich Chancellery contains several large bronze eagles, with some experts suggesting 12 scattered about the complex, and they were not all of the same design or size. For example, this one stood on a plinth above the main door and the steps visitors would climb to enter the Reich Chancellery from the so-called Court of Honor, a large, open-air, rectangular area. By July 1945, this particular eagle was lying on the ground, and was there photographed by a British Army photographer. Later, the Soviets ordered it taken as a trophy. Here we see Red Army troops and German civilians loading it aboard a truck for shipment to Moscow. This particular bronze eagle is now on public display at the Museum of the Great Patriotic War in Moscow. The eagle on display in London was sculpted by Kurt Schmid-Ehrmann and cast in distinct parts: the body, the wings, and the plinth. The eagle has a wingspan of 113 inches, is 75 inches tall, and weighs 550 pounds.
So they're two different ones?
I think I have located where this eagle was once displayed inside the Reich Chancellery. We see in these photographs from the late 1930s an identical eagle mounted above a doorway in a room called the Mosaic Hall, which led into the Rotunda or Round Hall.
Hmm.
The eagle is looking over its right shoulder, as the one on display in London does, meaning it is a Reichsadler or state eagle, as opposed to a Nazi Party eagle which looked to the left shoulder. As may be seen in the following photographs and film, the eagle remained in place for some weeks after the surrender of Berlin, high on its pedestal above the ravaged Reich Chancellery rooms. So it occurred to me that such an important historical item must have a chain of custody attached to it, from the Reich Chancellery in July 1945 to the Imperial War Museum in London today. Frankly, the Imperial War Museum has virtually no information about it. Speaking to archivists at the museum elicited no information. I decided to dig around in the Imperial War Museum archives myself, but first I decided to think and search logically. At some point in July 1945, this eagle must have been removed from the Reich Chancellery, presumably by Soviet troops, as the building was 100% under their control, as the NKVD secret police investigated the Führerbunker beneath the Reich Chancellery garden and the mysterious death of Adolf Hitler. Access to the Reich Chancellery was carefully controlled and was granted to small groups of British and American soldiers who were permitted to fill their pockets with various souvenirs, notably Nazi medals from the Chancellery's huge medal vault. I
Wild.
made a video recently about a War Merit Cross First Class that I obtained that had a chain of evidence showing that it was picked up as a souvenir by a British Army corporal inside the Reich Chancellery in 1945. But I find it extremely doubtful that the Soviets would have allowed British troops to bring in the necessary heavy equipment to wrench this thing off the wall and take it as a souvenir. It was clearly given to the British by the Soviets as some sort of goodwill gesture. But some unit would have had to have driven over to collect the thing. The British occupation force in July 1945 was the famous Desert Rats, the 7th Armoured Division. Obtaining a list of all the units that made up this division at the time, I next contacted all the regimental museums of these units to see if any records or photographs of the eagle exists. Those that replied had nothing. So if it was presented, it made some sense that it would have been received by the British general commanding in Berlin, at that time Major General L.O. Lin. I searched his extensive archive at the Imperial War Museum for any clues. Again, nothing. In fact, the first reference to this eagle only appears in 1946 in the records of the Control Commission for Germany and Austria, and an interesting exhibition titled Germany Under Control set up in the British Zone. An interesting array of top-quality historical items was sourced for the exhibition, which outlined how Britain was ruling its parts of Germany, etc. And an officer called Brigadier Lionel Cross was instructed to cooperate and produce this material from stores. Despite a search, I wasn't able to locate any of Brigadier Cross's private papers. Cross was running the public relations for the new British Army of the Rhine. As well as the eagle, there was also Hitler's personal standard, Grand Admiral Karl Dönnitz's personal flag, and one of the death masks taken after Reichsfuhrer SS Heinrich Himmler had died in British captivity in late May 1945. The trustees of the Imperial War Museum wrote to the Control Commission asking that when the Germany Under Control exhibition ended, that the army might consider giving them these interesting exhibits for display in London. Records from 1948 show that is indeed what happened. Incidentally, the 7th Armoured Division scrapbook found among General Lin's papers makes for fascinating reading, not the least being full of original German orders and documents, like this order signed by Heinrich Himmler. Documents concerning the surrender of Hamburg, the last city to fall to the Western Allies in Germany, and lots of original documentation concerning the German surrender to Field Marshal Montgomery on the 4th of May 1945, including stuff signed by Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel and others. There were also blank sheets of notepaper taken from Hitler's office inside the Reich Chancellery, showing again the souvenir hunting of British soldiers newly arrived in the city in 1945, and of course a lot of photographs showing the Allied victory parade. In 1948, the Eagle was loaded aboard a ship, the SS Selby, in Germany, and arrived at the docks in Hull on the 27th of July 1948, and was then taken, presumably by train with the other museum exhibits, to London, where it has remained for the past 78 years. So now we know where the Eagle came from, but still frustratingly, not how it was initially gifted or obtained by the British Army in 1945. So, I'm throwing this one out to my audience. Do any of you know how the Eagle came into British possession? Perhaps a grandfather or great-grandfather was involved in some way in taking it from the Reich Chancellery or in dealing with the Soviets. If you know anything, please contact me at the email address on the screen. Anyway, the Eagle is certainly one of the most visually striking relics of World War II and a visceral reminder of the abject failure of Nazism. And incidentally, if you are wondering what became of the Reich Chancellery, it was demolished by the Soviet authorities in 1949, and the space where it once stood was waste ground through most of the Cold War until the East Germans built these apartment blocks on it in the 1980s.
It'd be kind of
Many
weird to
thanks for
live there,
watching.
wouldn't
Please
it?
subscribe and share, and also visit.
That was a great video. It's not that crazy to me just because there's so many things that the Germans took at that time, the Nazis, that the entire Amber Room has never been found. I remember reading a mystery book about 8 years ago that basically like some wealthy, it was a fiction book, but it could very well be true. But that just some wealthy person had it set up in their house. Like they just paid somebody to go find it and bring it to them. It's just, in the last couple of years, they found like a basement full of art that had just been stashed in the basement of, I think it was like a restaurant or something crazy. So they're still finding stuff. I'm one of those people. I don't even think Hitler committed suicide. I think he ended up in Argentina, and who knows beyond that. But I think a lot of those guys ended up over there. I think I've seen like videos of locals talking about seeing him there after, and they helped, which is wild. But yeah, really, really good story. Mark Felton does a fantastic job. I enjoyed that a lot. I hope you guys did as well. If you did, hit the like button, share, uh, subscribe if you haven't done so already, and have an awesome, awesome day. Thanks for watching with me, guys.